Mustang. It's a horse. Fox body. What are we calling that? A rodent? A pain in the ass? Lives in the car out back? Shits in the parking lot?
All over the parking lot.
All over the parking lot. Probably keeps, what's it keeping away? Mice?
Smaller animals.
Cats?
It'll eat mice.
So we've got a horse, pretty and elegant, likes to gallop, and then we got a fox that's taking shit and eating mice. I know Ben's got, I bet he's got 10.
I'm just thinking y'all should do a nature documentary.
Ben says we should do a nature documentary. I guess if you own a Ford, you could probably do that. All right, so we've got the Fox Body Mustang back in the shop. We're working on it today. Ben's gapping out the doors. We've got the front cap removed. This one's going to SEMA this year. So the plans for this, as of right now, we're gonna get it stripped down. We're gonna get it gapped out nice, laser straight, throw some paint on it, make it shiny and pretty for SEMA. And then Andrew's gonna take it back and finish putting it together. So while Ben's doing that, let me show you what I'm working on. All right, so the first thing we're working on this Fox Body Mustang is the passenger fender. So I brought it over here to the metal table, and it's already had a previous, I wouldn't say repair, a modification where the antenna has been shaven. The problem with this area right now is whenever it was done, it's just had too much heat thrown at it, which has warped the panel, and it's warped it pretty bad. It's warped it down the side of the fender as well. So these panels are super thin. You can't really throw a lot of heat at them. Even grinding it, man, you just can't stay on it for a long time. You really got to take your time with this stuff. Because the problem is, when you start to warp something like that and it gets that bad out of shape, and then you start hammering, dollying back in, it starts to oil can on you. You just run into some issues. But you can look right there. See the daylight through there? That's a lot of filler we'd have to use to get that back into shape. And then plus, like I said, down here on the side, it's about the same. So what we're gonna do is cut this old repair out, shape this metal back up, and then we will go back in and put a new panel in there, TIG weld it up, and metal finish it out. And another thing is, so when we go to finish it out, hopefully you can see right here as well, where it was welded in, you see those edges all around that weld and that panel right there? So every time the sun beats down on this thing, if we were to leave it like this and just filler worked and primed over it, you would see that every time. It would shrink and you'd see that circle every time it heated up, and man, that'd just drive you crazy. So we're gonna cut it out. We're gonna get it done right. Luckily, this car has not had, I don't even know if it's had a paint job. Maybe one. I did mill thickness gauge on it. There's hardly any material on this car, so that's a good start. There's no cracking, there's no bubbling. Yes, this is a fantastic car to start with. Thank goodness we're not cutting out rust and doing all that stuff. So we'll start taking care of this, and then hopefully we'll start working to get this thing into primer over there. I know Ben's already got the gaps pretty well into shape. Working on that rear hatch right now. Those are always a pain. All right, let's get that cut out. Just cutting that out, it came back into shape a lot. So let's hammer dolly it a little bit. A little more right there. All right, so what we're doing right here with the hammer and dolly, so where the heat kind of shrunk this metal and made it take a dive right here, what it's doing, it's crowning up high over here. So as I'm hammering the low spots back up behind the panel, I'm using the dolly to kind of use pressure, and I'm hammering off dolly. So what I'm doing, I'm kind of pushing a little bit of force on that high spot with the dolly as I'm hammering the low spot in the fender with the hammer. And basically we're doing two jobs at once at that point. We're moving that low metal back out, and we're also pushing that high metal in, and they're kind of working together to make it a whole lot easier to come out, because the metal, it wants to go back where it came from. So this is really thin stuff too, so it didn't take much to get that back in the shape. Another thing we did, we used a hole saw and we drilled this out, and we made another circle essentially. Now we could have cut out and had a square panel, but square patches with square corners tend to distort more when they're welded. So if it's feasible to where you can do a circle patch, that takes the heat a little better, it's less distortion. So we're gonna go see if we can find a scrap piece of like 18 gauge. We're gonna shear a little square out, and we'll trace it, and then we'll just snip out that circle, and hopefully we can start welding a new patch into place. But yeah, that all came out great. This top section of the fender, as I worked this low spot back in, this came back into shape too. Just had a little bitty low spot right there, but it's all looking really good. I see we've got another ding down there we can go ahead and hammer and dolly out when we've got the fender off too. But all right, let's get a patch. Get this woodward shear. Another thing we had to do was the top of this fender's got just a slight contour in it, so we did the same thing with that piece, just gave it a slight little curve to it. That way it sits in here real nice and tight. All right, so now we've got that fitting really nice. We've got a good tight tolerance around through there. We've created a little bit of shape to it, so we're ready to start tacking this thing in. I'm gonna get the Lincoln 230 over here. We're gonna see if we can start burning this thing together. And what we're gonna do while we're doing this, we're going to planish our welds basically as we're going. So every time we hit a weld that's creating heat, it's shrinking, we're gonna go ahead, hammer and dolly on that, keep everything good and flat. Not only that, TIG's a little bit of a softer weld, so that's why we like to TIG some of these pieces. It's a lot easier to metal finish it out. I mean, almost just hammering and dollying your welds when you planish them, they're flattening out almost smooth as they are. So it only takes a little bit of grinding. You're not really having to get into your metal too much. So that's why we like to TIG on this. So normally I would cleco this. I would make another little patch and I'd cleco it so I know it's not gonna move. But this metal and this fender is so thin, I don't want to weld any more than I have to weld on it, so I'm having a bunch of little holes. So I'm gonna grab another magnet. Hopefully we can get it secure in place and get going. My glove. So far so good. We're all tacked in around it now. Coming along nice. Now we just have to slowly weld it in so we don't warp anything. So we'll just go a tack at a time until we get it. All right, while we're here, we're waiting on stuff to cool. Let's chat for a minute. Yeah, so I thought I'd talk a little bit about what I'm using. I don't think we really talked about that too much. Obviously, the Lincoln Aspect 230 welder is the welder that we use the most, especially on our thicker stuff. We've got one of the smaller Lincoln TIGs that we wheel around the shop. Works really awesome. As far as cups go, I've got the Furic number 8 on here. That is kind of my go-to. Even with aluminum, you'll drop down to a smaller cup, but I really like this one. It is kind of an all-around just good cup. I'm using the sky blue tungstens. Those will weld pretty much everything, especially everything around here that we're gonna weld. Stainless, mild steel, aluminum. And so when it comes to sheet metal stuff like this, 16, 18, 20 gauge, typically using like a 16th tungsten and 035 rod. It's kind of what I like there. As we hop up to thicker metals, 8, 3/16, stuff like that, we'll hop up to a little bit bigger tungsten, 3/32, I think, and then we'll go to 16th rod. That's kind of just where I find I like to be. We've got some of the bigger cups, the 12s, the 14s. They work amazing, especially you get in one of those tight corners you can't get to. You can extend that tungsten out where you need it, and you still get good gas coverage. So definitely, if you haven't used a Furic cup, go over there and check him out, because he's got some really cool stuff, and you definitely won't be disappointed in the cup. That's for sure. All right, so we got that fully welded. Let's check out the back side. Yep, check that out. Good, nice penetration all the way around. That's what we want to see. What hole? Ooh, stinking hole. That feels good too. So that was painless, right? Turned out nice, looks good, metal finished it out. So yeah, we took a repair that was there, and I tried to work that out a little bit to see if it was savable, and it started oil canning and doing a bunch of stuff. So the amount of work we would have had to put into that old repair that was on here just wasn't worth doing. So a little bit of hole saw action so we get a good, nice, clean circle. That way we're not doing a square patch. Those corners like to distort. Welding in a circle, that's a good way to do it. We controlled our heat. We took our time as we went around it, welding it together. We hammered and dollied, planished those welds to try to keep everything good and flat as we were going. And then we took a little 36 grit, just knocked the top off of that weld. We filed it a little bit, and then ran a DA over it. And she's nice. All right, so we've got these cutouts in the hood, and that's where basically the air cleaner is running. We didn't do any of that work, but it was already mocked up, and apparently the air cleaner is kind of running into the hood bracing, and so they had already notched that bracing out. So we've got to go in and reinforce it, because basically what's happening is you go to shut the hood is flexing because it doesn't have the support anymore. So initially what I did, I went into the Fusion 360, I drew something up real quick out of 1/8 inch plate. Basically this is what we got, which looks cool, fits in there nice, but I wasn't really loving just how thick it was, but I felt like it really needed the structure. So I kind of changed my design a little bit, cut some flat sheet metal out of 16 gauge. We went over to the shear, we sheared that out. We broke a couple of edges on it, and we ended up cutting out one of those slots to kind of match the slots that are in the hood brace here. After we've gotten that welded together, super strong. So it ended up working out a lot better than I thought it would, and luckily we didn't need the thicker plate like that. So I think that's going to work out well. That's going to keep some good structure into the hood now, and we won't have to worry about that down the road. So then we got it fit into the hood here. We've got it inside the bracing. We've cut an old piece of square tubing that we're going to use to tack into place to try to help keep that structure in the hood so it doesn't move on us while we're creating heat with our welds. And once we've got that in, we've kind of slowly just started tacking this piece into place. And we're just going to slowly do that till we get it all in. We'll get it ground down, metal finished. And it turned out pretty good. Still got a little more work left to do on this side, a little more metal finishing to do, but see, she's got some good structure, not flexing. I've got one more to do. All right, so now we got the hood all finished up. We've got that fender worked over there. Ben's been working. He's got everything stripped down, worked, gapped out, and end primer. So Fox Body's looking good right now. Body's ready to be blocked. We've still got a lot of other work to do. We've got the engine compartment that's still in bare metal. It's all welded up. We've got to get in there and finish all of that out. We've got the rear deck that we've got to get that thing lined up and squared away because it's got a few little issues, so we're going to work that into it when we're working the body. Yeah, so far so good. Well, that's all the time we've got for this week on the Fox Body. Next time we get on it, we'll take care of that engine compartment, hopefully do some blocking and get this thing really close to paint, we hope. But appreciate the support. Thanks for watching. T-shirts up on the website. Check them out. See you on the next one.